Mammalian transport systems. The need for transport. Diffusion is the free movement of particles in a liquid or a gas down a concentration gradient. In single-celled organisms and microscopic multicellular organisms, diffusion is sufficient to supply all their needs. Because the diffusion distances from the outside to the innermost areas of the cells are very small, the surface area in contact with the outside environment is very large when compared to the volume of the inside of the organism. Its surface area to volume ratio, Sa/Vol, is large, and the metabolic demands are low. The need for transport in multicellular animals. In many animals, including all the vertebrates, the transport system is the heart and circulatory system and the fluid that flows through it. This is an example of a mass transport system. Substances are transported in the flow of a fluid with a mechanism for moving it around the body by processes such as diffusion, osmosis, and active transport. Features of mass transport systems. They have exchange surfaces, a system of vessels that carry substances, a way of moving materials fast enough to supply the needs of the organism, a suitable transport medium, a way of adapting the rate of transport to the needs of the organism, and a way of making sure that substances are moved in the right direction. Circulation systems. There are two types of circulatory systems. They are open blood circulatory systems and closed blood circulatory systems. There are two types of circulatory systems on the way they circulate. 1. Single circulatory systems. Animals such as fish have a single circulation system. The heart pumps deoxygenated blood to the gills, the organs of gas exchange where the blood takes in oxygen, becomes oxygenated, and gives up carbon dioxide at the same time. The blood then travels on around the rest of the body of the fish, giving up oxygen to the body cells before returning to the heart. 2. Double circulatory systems. It involves two separate circulatory systems. The systemic circulation carries oxygenated blood, oxygen-rich blood, from the heart to the cells of the body. It also carries the deoxygenated blood, blood that has given up its oxygen to the body cells, back to the heart. The pulmonary circulation carries deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs and then carries the oxygenated blood back to the heart. Important. The main advantages of a closed system are: the pressure can be increased to make the blood flow more quickly. The flow can be directed more precisely to the organs that need most oxygen and nutrients. The main advantages of double circulation are: ensure that the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood cannot mix. The fully oxygenated blood can be delivered quickly to the body tissues at high pressure. The blood going through the tiny blood vessels in the lungs is at relatively low pressure, so it does not damage the vessels and allows gas exchange to take place. The oxygenated blood returns to the heart, so it can be pumped hard and sent around the body at high pressure. Why is a double circulation ideal for an active animal that maintains its own body temperature independently of the environment? They have to maintain a constant body temperature that may be higher or lower than their surroundings. This takes a lot of resources, so their cells need plenty of oxygen and glucose and make waste products that need to be removed quickly. What is the mass transport system in mammals? Cardiovascular system. The roles of the blood. The cardiovascular system is made up of a series of vessels with the heart as a pump to move blood through the vessels. The passage of blood through the vessels is called circulation. Substances move between the plasma, or red blood cells, and the body cells by diffusion or by active transport. Diffusion is enough because the tiniest blood vessels have walls only 1 cell thick. Every cell in the body is near one of these small vessels. Components of blood are white blood cells, platelets, red blood cells, and plasma. Blood plasma is the fluid part of the mass transport system. Over 50% of blood volume is plasma. It consists digested food products, e.g. glucose and amino acids, from the small intestine to the liver, and then to all the parts of the body where they are needed either for immediate use or storage. Nutrient molecules from storage areas to the cells that need them, excretory products, e.g. carbon dioxide and urea, from cells to the organs such as the lungs or kidneys, and hormones from where they are made to where they cause changes in the body. Erythrocytes, red blood cells. There are approximately 5 million erythrocytes per millimeter 3 of blood. They contain hemoglobin, a red pigment that carries oxygen and gives them their color. They are made in the bone marrow. Mature erythrocytes do not contain a nucleus, have a limited life of about 120 days. Adaptations of red blood cells to transport blood. The biconcave disc shape of the cells increases surface area. Having no nucleus. Have a thin membrane, so gases easily diffuse through. Leukocytes, white blood cells. White blood cells are much larger than erythrocytes, but can change their shape. There are around 4,000, 11,000 per millimeter 3 of blood. They are made in the bone marrow, although some mature in the thymus gland. They all contain a nucleus. There are several types as lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, neutrophils, and basophils. Platelets. Platelets are tiny fragments of large cells called megakaryocytes, which are found in the bone marrow. There are about 150,000 to 400,000 platelets per millimeter 3 of blood. They are involved in the blood clotting process. Transport of oxygen. The many hemoglobin molecules that are in the red blood cells transport oxygen. Each hemoglobin molecule is a large globular protein consisting of 4 peptide chains, each with an ion-containing prosthetic group. Each group can collect 4 molecules of oxygen in a reversible process to form oxyhemoglobin, Hb+, 402 Hb.402 hemoglobin plus oxygen oxyhemoglobin. When an oxygen molecule binds, it increases the affinity of other hemoglobin molecules to bind with oxygen, and also the same process happens when oxygen is removed. When the blood enters the lungs, the concentration of oxygen in the red blood cells is relatively low. Oxygen moves into the red blood cells from the air in the lungs by diffusion. The oxygen is collected and bound to the hemoglobin, so the free oxygen concentration in the cytoplasm of the red blood cells stay low. This maintains a steep concentration gradient from the air in the lungs to the red blood cells, so more and more oxygen diffuses in and joins onto the hemoglobin. The oxygen levels are relatively low in the body tissues. The concentration of oxygen in the cytoplasm of the red blood cells is higher than in the surrounding tissue. As a result, oxygen moves out into the body cells by diffusion down its concentration gradient. The hemoglobin molecules give up some of their oxygen. So in the lungs, the hemoglobin rapidly gains oxygen, and in the tissues, as the oxygen saturation of the environment falls, oxygen is released rapidly. Because of the strong affinity of oxygen for hemoglobin, a small change in the proportion of the oxygen in the surrounding environment can have a big effect on the saturation of the blood with oxygen. Transport of carbon dioxide. Waste carbon dioxide diffuses from the respiring cells of the body tissues into the blood along a concentration gradient. When carbon dioxide is dissolved in the blood, it reacts slowly with the water to form carbonic acid, H2CO3. The carbonic acid separates to form hydrogen ions H+, and hydrogen carbonate ions HCO3. CO2 plus H2O H2CO3 HCO3 plus H+. About 5% of the carbon dioxide is carried in solution in the plasma. A further 10 to 20% combines with hemoglobin molecules to make carbaminohemoglobin. Most of the carbon dioxide is transported in the cytoplasm of the red blood cells as hydrogen carbonate ions. The enzyme carbonic anhydrase controls the rate of the reaction between carbon dioxide and water to produce carbonic acid. In the body tissues, there is a high concentration of carbon dioxide in the blood, so carbonic anhydrase catalyzes the formation of carbonic acid. In the lungs, the carbon dioxide concentration is low, so carbonic anhydrase catalyzes the reverse reaction, and free carbon dioxide diffuses out of the blood and into the lungs. The Bow effect. When the proportion of carbon dioxide in the tissues is high, the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen is reduced. So in active tissues with high carbon dioxide levels, hemoglobin releases oxygen more readily. Carbon dioxide levels in the lung capillaries are relatively low, which makes it easier for oxygen to bind to the hemoglobin. The changes in the oxygen dissociation curve that result as the carbon dioxide level changes are known as the Bow effect. Fetal hemoglobin. The blood of the fetus contains a special form of the oxygen-carrying pigment called fetal hemoglobin. Fetal hemoglobin has a higher affinity for oxygen than the adult hemoglobin of the mother. The maternal and fetal blood also run in opposite directions. This makes the oxygen concentration gradient between the mother's blood and that of her fetus as steep as possible, maximizing the oxygen transfer to the blood of the fetus. Important. As CO2 builds up, it affects the pH, and this has an effect on the protein structure. So hemoglobin does not work as well, i.e. it has lower affinity for oxygen. Platelets are tiny fragments of large cells called megakaryocytes, which are found in the bone marrow. When you are at rest or exercising gently, only about 25% of the oxygen carried by the hemoglobin is released into your cells. There is another 75% in reserve in the transport system for when you are very active. Questions. 1. Explain why large animals cannot take in all the substances they need from outside the body through their skin. Within a large multicellular organism, many chemical reactions take place inside every microscopic cell. These cells require a supply of chemical substances, such as glucose and oxygen for cellular respiration. These must be transported from outside a large organism into the cells. This and other waste products that are produced need to be removed from the cells before they cause damage to them. In large complex animals such as humans, chemicals made in a cell in one part of the body, such as a hormone like insulin or adrenaline, may influence a different type of cell elsewhere in the body. So substances made internally need to be moved around the body as well. 2. What are the functions of blood? Delivers the materials needed by the cells of the body and carries away the waste products of their metabolism. Carrying hormones, chemical messages, from one part of the body to another. Forming part of the defense system of the body. Distributing heat. 3. What are the functions of blood plasma? The plasma helps to maintain a steady body temperature by transferring heat around the system from internal organs, e.g. the gut, or very active tissues, e.g. leg muscles in someone running, to the skin, where it can be lost to the surroundings. It also acts as a buffer to regulate pH changes. Transport substances such as digested food, nutrients, gases, hormones, and excretory products.